The Unbreakable Will. The story of Helen Keller. Let me take you back in time to a little town in Alabama where a baby girl named Helen Keller was born on June 27, 1880. She was a bright and healthy child, but fate had something else in store for her. At just 19 months old, Helen fell terribly ill. Some say it was scarlet fever, others believe it was meningitis. Whatever it was, it changed her life forever. When she recovered, she had lost her ability to see and hear. Imagine a world with no sights and no sounds, a world where she couldn't understand or be understood. A child lost in darkness. Helen grew up in confusion and frustration, trapped in a world where she had no way to communicate. She would feel the movements of people around her, but had no way to understand what they were saying. The frustration built up, and she would throw tantrums, screaming, kicking, and sometimes even breaking things. Her parents, Arthur and Kate Keller, loved her dearly, but had no idea how to help her. Helen's mother would often cry, watching her daughter suffer. "Arthur," she said one night, "we have to do something. She's smart. I know she is. We just have to find a way to reach her." They traveled far and wide, looking for solutions, but no one had any answers. It wasn't until they met Alexander Graham Bell that things began to change. Bell, the great inventor, saw potential in Helen and referred them to the Perkins Institute for the Blind, where a young teacher named Anne Sullivan was chosen to help Helen. The arrival of Anne Sullivan. March 3, 1887, Anne Sullivan arrived at the Keller home. She was only 20 years old, but she had already overcome many struggles of her own. Having been nearly blind in her childhood, she understood the challenges of living in darkness. Helen had never been taught discipline, and she had no concept of proper behavior. The first thing Anne had to do was establish control. She introduced herself, but Helen, not knowing who she was, simply ignored her. Anne extended her hand, but Helen, in frustration, pushed her away. Anne realized that if Helen was going to learn, she needed to be separated from her family. She convinced the Kellers to let her live with Helen in a small cottage on their property where there would be no distractions. The first lessons. Anne began teaching Helen by spelling words into her palm, starting with simple ones. D-O-L-L. But Helen didn't understand. To her, these hand movements were meaningless. One day, Anne handed Helen a doll and spelled D-O-L-L into her palm. Helen snatched the doll, threw it to the ground, and stomped her foot in frustration. Anne remained calm. She picked up the doll and tried again. Over and over, she spelled words into Helen's palm. But Helen remained confused. The water pump miracle. Then came the moment that changed everything. Anne led Helen to the water pump in the yard. She placed one of Helen's hands under the stream of cool water and with the other spelled W-A-T-E-R into her palm. Something clicked. Helen suddenly understood that the cool sensation she felt had a name. Excitedly, she touched the ground, asking for its name. Anne spelled E-A-R-T-H. Helen touched the tree, the door, the sky, wanting to know the name of everything. In just a few hours, Helen had learned over 30 words. A new world opens. From that day on, there was no stopping Helen. She learned Braille, she learned to write, and incredibly, she even learned to speak. She placed her fingers on people's lips as they spoke and mimicked their movements. She worked tirelessly, practicing day and night. She went on to become the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree from Radcliffe College. But that was just the beginning. Helen's story spread across the country. She became an advocate for people with disabilities. She met and worked with leaders like Mark Twain, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Winston Churchill. She traveled the world, giving speeches, inspiring millions. Her message was clear. No obstacle is too great to overcome. Helen's later years and legacy. Helen Keller's journey didn't stop with her education. She became a prolific writer, publishing 14 books and hundreds of essays. She wrote about her experiences, about hope, about the power of perseverance. Her autobiography, The Story of My Life, became one of the most inspiring books ever written. During World War II, she visited wounded soldiers, many of whom had lost their sight and hearing in battle. She reassured them, telling them, "You have lost one sense, but you have not lost your spirit. And as long as you have your spirit, nothing is impossible." Helen also worked tirelessly for social causes. She fought for the rights of the disabled, advocated for women's suffrage, and even spoke out against racial discrimination. She believed that the world should be a place of equality and opportunity for all. Despite her challenges, Helen Keller lived a life fuller than most. She once said, "The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart." Her story continues to inspire people across generations, reminding us that with determination, anything is possible. So, the next time you feel like giving up, remember Helen Keller. If she could break through the darkness and silence, so can you.